Now that we have our menu created, so our first very basic menu, we want to go ahead and create a template for our header. So we can do that one of two ways. You can go to your theme builder and add it there. I'm just going to select add new, and then I'm going to select the header here, give it a title, header, or main header, should I say, main header, and then create template. And then of course this will load up the page builder, and then we can get into a little bit more detail about these containers. So we're not going to be working with any templates. What we are going to do is we're going to drag a container in first of all. And now we get to see some more quirky designs of the container and how we can make each of the individual elements within that container shrink and grow as the page grows in size and shrinks in size. So depending on the device that the user is viewing that page on. So you now understand the alignments. So that is the justification and alignments, which will be the horizontal and vertical alignments. Depending on the direction, but we haven't covered off how to apply those alignments to individual elements rather than everything within a container. And we haven't discussed how we can make individual elements shrink or take up more space than the other elements. So this will all make a lot more sense as we start building this menu out. And it's actually a really good template to get used to and familiar with containers. So now we have our first container in. The best thing about containers is we don't need to add any more containers to this. We can actually get the exact design that we want simply by just dropping in these three different elements into this one container. So no need for columns or anything like that. And what this means is it just reduces the amount of code for your web pages. Means they load faster, and Google really likes Flexbox containers. So the less columns that we have and the more Flexbox containers we have, the more Google will just enjoy reading that page and hopefully rank us better on the search engines. So let's just go now and add these elements that we want. So we're going to hit the plus here to add an element. We're going to add a logo. Don't worry about the logo yet. We are going to get to that. We're going to then add another element. We are going to drag the WordPress menu. Now you will see that there is a menu element here. That is the mega menu. So for this website, we are not going to be working with a mega menu. There just isn't enough depth of pages to this website. So we're going to be working with the normal WordPress menu. But don't worry, we will be getting into how to build mega menus as we progress through this course. So now we just want to add one more element, which is a button. I'm just going to search for a button, drag that in as well, so that it is looking like that. So you'll notice that I already have a logo added there. Attached to this lesson is this logo if you wanted to go ahead and use this one. So go ahead and use that. I just literally knocked this up in 2 minutes using Canva. Canva Pro is what I use for absolutely everything, from the imagery to my logos to background images, absolutely everything. And as a professional web developer, definitely a tool and piece of software that I recommend using. So go ahead and upload this here. So if you select site logo, you can upload this here. And once that is done, we can then start styling this. So first thing that we want to do is come to this container, and I'm going to change the direction at the minute, which is currently vertical. So it's all being stacked vertically. We're going to change the direction to horizontal. So that is already looking a lot better, because that is what you would expect a header to look like. Now let's actually start changing the sizes of each of these elements. So let's come back to the logo. I'm going to come to style, and we're going to give this a pixel width of maybe 200. Let's see what 200 looks like. 210. Yeah, I would say 210 is fine for me. And you'll notice now each of these elements are only taking up as much space as is required. So what you have at the minute is all of this empty space over here. And you'll see that that is what shrinks and grows as the page grows in size and shrinks in size. So what we want to do is just to the top level container, we want to add space between or space around. So I'm going to go with space between because that's going to push the two elements at the end to the very ends, and then anything in the middle is going to be aligned in the middle. So that is already looking a lot better. Now the align items is going to be the vertical alignment. Since we are running horizontally, the alignments is going to be the vertical alignments. Of course, if you switch that, you can see that the alignments and justifications swap their direction. So what we want to do, leave that on a horizontal row, and then we want to change the align items to center because it's just going to drag and move these two elements into the center of the container vertically, which is what we want. So that is already looking a lot better. So we can see that that responsiveness is working. But let's just say now that we wanted this to be pushed over to the button. So as we added more things to our menu, it would just move out more to the left, and the space would be over here. So how would we actually do that? So we can actually come along to this element, so to the menu here, and what we also have under each individual element, as well as on the containers, is if we come to the advanced section, we can see here that we have the align self. So this is the alignment, but specifically for this one element only. So now we can change the alignment of this one thing. So we can change how this aligns up or down. So if you wanted to add a specific alignment to a specific element, you can do that through the align self. Now, the thing that we are interested in here is the size. So what you'll notice is that we have a none, we have a grow, and we have a shrink. Now, I don't really work with shrink all that often, but I do use grow a lot. And basically what grow will do is by adding a flex grow, it is going to increase the size of that container for that element. So container, not to be confused with the other container that we are using as the parent, the top level, but it basically increases the size of that element to fill all of that space in between. So rather than having these empty spaces either side, it now gives all of the space to that one element. And now if we come back to the, let's come back and select that. If we come to the content of that, of the menu, we can now change the alignment to right, and we can see that is now pushed over to the right, and that is exactly what we was trying to achieve there. So that is how the grow works. So at the minute we have just set that as a grow to take up all of that space, but you can get a lot more granular by adding a custom grow. So if we actually select custom, we can see that we have a flex grow and shrink. And basically what that flex grow and shrink does is, just to give you an example of this, I'll leave that as grow for now, is if we now select the, let's say we go with 2, so we can go with 2 here. What I will do is I'll just duplicate that again. So we have 3 containers within the one container. I'm actually going to give each one of these a fixed width because this won't work without a fixed width. So let's just give this a fixed width of maybe 300. What I'll actually do then is I'll duplicate that 3 times, delete the other 2, so that we have 3 containers here, all of the same width. Now let's just quickly give these different backgrounds just so that we can tell them apart. Classic color, go with red. This one we can go with a different color. Let's go with maybe purple. And then this one, same one again. Again, this is just to show you how the flex grow works and how it's all relative to the space and everything else. So it'll be easier to see this visually. So with each of these 3 containers now set within this parent container, if we now, let's say, so we've got this all with the justify left, right? So this is starting at the beginning. Now let's just say that we wanted one of these containers to grow as the page grows. So let's just say at the minute you can see that these all stay the same size until it gets to the point where these are bigger than the available space, and that empty space starts appearing over on the right side there, right? So of course, if we was to change the alignment of this parent container to center, or even to space around or space between, you would see again it's going to work like that. So the space is in between them now. That is fine, that is working as expected. Let's move that back to the start again. But what if we want one container to grow? So we know now if we come to advanced and we set this to grow, that is going to take up all of the extra available space. So that is going to be the same size up until the point it starts to creep into the extra available space. So that is what grow does, and that works great for an example like our menu, where we just have the one container that is on running in a horizontal direction to actually grow, and the others to all stay exactly as they are. But if we say wanted to create something more custom, what we can do is we can increase the flex grow of a certain container there. And what it will actually do, let's go back to desktop. So if we come to custom and increase that, let's say we have that as a 3. Let's say we wanted to then change this one as well to a custom. We'll leave that as a 1. And then we can set this one as a custom 1 as well. Just so you can see, that is a 1. That is a 2. I thought that looked a bit bigger. So these two which are set as a 1, so a shrink flex grow 1, we can see are the same size. And this which is a flex grow 2 is larger. So what we can do is we can actually start increasing that, and that will make it relatively bigger by 3. And then the same with 4 and the same with 5. So we can also then start giving different ones a 2, which will be 2 times bigger relative to this one. So rather than understand all of the equations that's going on here, because there are, just as an example here, to work out the the actual space that it will take up, there is a big long equation here. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of this, but just understand that when you are working with this, that the flex grow, the higher the number, the wider, the more space that it will take up. So it's almost like giving a column a distinct width relative to the other columns, so that it is fully responsive no matter the device that we are viewing it on. So it's going to be that size relative to the flex grow that we give it. So have a play around with that and see how it works, because it is incredibly useful to give us real granular design over all of our different design aspects. But that is how you would get really granular with the custom size. Now, there isn't too many times that we have to use that, but just know that it is there if you needed to. For examples like up the top here, let's close this now. Just the flex grow turned on here, as we have done, is exactly what we need to serve its purpose. Now, I've just gone ahead and added some global colors, so you guys can add whichever colors you want. If you did want to just follow along, I will also attach this to this lesson so that you know what the colors that we are using are. But to change your site settings, obviously come up to here, come to global colors, and you can see here that we've set my primary, secondary text to a dark black, and the accent as a dark purple, and that is what you are seeing here. So if you wanted to copy those in, you can, or use your own colors, that's absolutely fine. So with those all saved, we can then come back, hit the X, and now we can finish off styling this this menu. So let's select the menu, let's select style, the typography we want to change. Let's make this a Montserrat. Let's give it a rem. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with rems is a relative measure depending on the user's screen size. So the screen size, sorry, not screen size, the font size for their browser. So for example, if you wanted to come along and change your font size for your browser, you could come to settings here. We could go to appearance and font size. Now, if you change your font size up to a large, For example, a 1 rem would be exactly what you have set as your browser default. So 1.5 is 1.5 times larger than your browser default. 3 rem would be 3 times larger. And what we get is it is relative to what the user has set up for their browser. So if somebody is hard of vision or hard of sight, they might have a large font size there. In which case, the website, our website that they are viewing, that is all designed in rem, is going to look larger for them, because their default font size for their browser is set large. So it just creates a better user experience. So we're going to be using rem here. So I'm going to leave that as a 1. So that is going to be the default size that that user has set for their browser. So we're going to leave that as that. Maybe make that 500. 500 is good. I'm happy with that. Next up, let's just sort out the color and this underline pointer. So I don't really like a pointer, so I'm going to change the pointer to off. And what we will do is as we hover, it's just going to change color slightly then. So that is what I prefer. You guys can obviously have it however you want. Let's go ahead back to style now. Let's change this text color. I'm going to select the accent for this. So it's that dark purple. Let's now take a look at the hover. So for the hover, let's go ahead and just make that a lighter purple maybe. That's very, very subtle. Something like that is good. I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave it as that. So we have this slight change as the user hovers over it. And then the active, in fact, let's change the active, keep it the same as that. So I'm going to copy that color, come back to active and paste that color in. So it is the same. So that is looking good. We've also got the drop down here. If you wanted to have, if you did have a drop down or nested categories, pages within your menu, but we don't have that. So that is fine. So that is all looking good. I'm happy with the menu. The only thing we have to do now is the button. So let's just quickly style that. In fact, let's just make this a global. So we'll come up to site settings. Let's come to buttons. We're going to now create our button. So let's change the typography to maybe Open Sans. No, actually, type in Sans Pro. Sans Pro. So Source Sans Pro. Let's give that a rem of 1. It looks like that. The weight, let's leave it as 400, maybe 500. Yeah, 500 I'm happy with. I'm going to leave that default. And that is fine. So now for the text color, let's make that the accent again. Now the background type, we're going to add a gradient. So the primary color is going to be primary. Second color for the gradient will be secondary. I'm going to change the direction of that to 120 so that it runs at an angle. I just prefer that diagonal from top corner to bottom left corner. So that looks good. And what I will do is I'm going to add a border radius to that. So add a 50 border radius so it's nice and soft. With the hover state, let's go ahead and keep that text color as accent. That's fine. The dark purple. Going to have the gradient again. Let's go ahead and do exactly the same. Primary as the first color, the second color as the secondary color. But what we'll do this time is we're just going to mix that up. So maybe move that to 260. And you can see as you hover over it, it just switches sides. That looks pretty cool. I like that. Let's also add a box shadow for the hover state as well here. So let's add a spread of maybe 5, blur of maybe 8. Let's change that color to a much lighter color. In fact, that's probably a bit too much spread there. I'm happy with that. In fact, let's keep that as a blur 10. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to leave it like that with a box shadow. So I'm going to save changes to that. That is our button global default now set up. So whenever we set up a button, it's going to look like that. Now, of course, we do need to change the text of this button. So we're going to come back to the, or come out of the site settings, back to the page builder. Let's select the button. let's say contact us as the text. And now, of course, the link is going to be whichever our link is going to be. So whatever the final website is going to be with a contact us. Now, of course, we're not going to do that because this site isn't going to go live, but you want to add in the link to your contact page, obviously. So you would want to do that once we push this finally live. So that is actually looking really good now. So I don't think that there's anything else that we need to do with that. So I'm actually going to hit the publish now. Going to add a condition to the entire site and then save and close. And that is our header taken care of. So now we can start working on a very basic footer. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the footer in the next lesson, but just to get something there, because of course it's going to be completely different to what you will need for your own business, for your own website, and you're not going to get any benefit watching me build out a load of different pages with a load of different content that is going to be completely irrelevant for what you are trying to build. So in the next lesson, we're going to quickly knock up a footer just so that we have a standard basic footer for our website as well before we move on to our homepage.